Hello guys, my name is Fox. Welcome to my Renata Glasc video guide as of patch 12.11. As a little bit of info on me before we get going with the guide, I've been playing League of Legends since Season 4, around NAR's release. I've been Diamond consistently for the past 3 years, and this season was my first time hitting Masters, all thanks to Renata. First things first, who is Renata Glasc? Honestly, one of the best things to ever grace the Rift. Everything that this champion is and does is just hot. Very hot. She's a cruel businesswoman, and that translates extremely well into her kid, and I think Riot did an excellent job in executing this champion. Okay, now that we got that out of our system, let's start having a look at her kit. First off, we have her passive Leverage. I like to think of it as a combination between Leona and MF passives. It's a really basic ability. You auto-attack someone, your AD carry, or anybody else, damages them, and it procs for bonus damage. You should try and use this in lane and even out of lane as much as you can, provided that you are safe to do so. Handshake is her Q. It is a great engage hook type ability. You can win most level 2 all-ins if you land it. However, what makes this ability truly special is the fact that her second reactivation will stop dashes. It's similar to Janna Q, and it will stop anything from Zac E, Jarvan EQ, Leona E. The only problem is that it requires a pretty fast reaction time, and just the first part of the Q will not stop the dash usually. Now, as for Bailout, this is probably one of the most ridiculous abilities out there, and I say that because this ability expects you to know exactly how much damage the target you W will take at any given time in the game. It's a great attack speed and movement speed steroid, which also revives its target if they score a takedown. You can either use it reactively on a low HP ally or proactively to urge an ally into fighting. Loyalty Program is an AoE shield that also damages enemies hit. This is probably the best tool you can use to have short trades in lane and poke the enemy AD carry. There is honestly not much to say about her E, given the fact that it is just a shield. And finally, her ult, Hostile Takeover, grants enemies attack speed and they start auto-attacking each other. Like most game-changing ults, it's best to be patient with it, especially since the travel time is pretty slow. Try to use it when the fight already started or in tight jungle corridors. Moving on to runes and starting with precision, there is absolutely no keystone of interest for Renata here. The domination tree isn't much better. Honestly, the only keystone that could maybe work is electrocute, and it's for bold poke trades like auto attack, auto attack, but it's still subpar compared to other rune setups. Now moving on to a better tree, sorcery. Aerie is the go-to rune for most enchanter setups. It has great synergy with all the enchanter mythics. Since this is, in my opinion, one of her best runes, I took the liberty of creating multiple setups, so use whichever one you feel the most comfortable with. Before we move on, I wanted to quickly mention that you can replace Aerie with Comet if you feel like you need the extra poke, because Comet will always hit due to your E slow. However, I still feel like Aerie is much more optimal than Comet. In the Resolve tree, there is only one keystone of interest, and of course I'm talking about Guardian, which I personally think is her best rune. This exact setup is probably the one I enjoy the most because I feel like it blends really well with the risky playstyle that this champion has. The tenacity feels really good, and Triumph is just amazing on her. And for the last viable rune that you can find in the inspiration tree, It's Glacial Augment, and I actually think it's pretty situational. I myself like to use it into pretty sticky and close combat team comps, just to create room for me and my AD carry to kite back. You can imagine something like Darius top, Jarvan jungle, Silas mid, Leona support. The only problem I have with this rune, really, is the fact that it procs off of your ult. So if you ult somebody who is melee and is trying to hit someone, but they're not close enough, they'll waste time being slowed. I just want to quickly mention two things before moving forward into builds. First is that you should treat this guide like a starter pack of sorts. Realistically, you can combine almost any items and runes out of the ones I touched upon. Second, I have not included Knight's Vow or Zeke's Convergence simply because they haven't been that good for a while now, but that can change, so definitely look out for that. In essence, Renata operates really well on two main build paths, either Enchanter or Tank. The Enchanter build doesn't differ much, and you'll usually want to run the items that you see on the screen. The only difference really is the Mythic, and if I'm going to be completely honest, the Mythic I think is superior to the other two is Shurelya's. Now, as for my Tank Renata build, I'm sure you'll notice something strange at first. And yes, I'm talking about the Tornmail. The reasons behind it are pretty straightforward. One is that I'm willing to give 400 gold for the Tornmail stats and the extra beefiness. And secondly, there are team comps that will simply hit you more than you hit them. Now, as far as matchups go, I won't be talking about off-meta supports. However, I will take a moment to talk about AP carries. In my opinion, Renata's pretty bad both with and against mages, except if there's Swain or Cassio, and then she can actually play with them, but not against them. I'll rate each interaction with either bad, okay, or great, and we'll try and give brief comments on them. So let's get going. Renata loves being either with or against the Aphelios, especially if he has red-white guns. That's simply because Renata in general likes the AD carries that have a lot of power in their auto attacks. So any AD carry that has less power in the auto attacks but more power in their abilities, the more that happens, the more it cuts down on Renata's interest. Ashe is great with Renata. She's kind of meh into her because Ashe can keep Renata at a distance. Kate is pretty much just like Ashe for the same reasons. Draven is absolutely amazing because of the aggression. Ezreal is okay-ish if he's with you, but he's absolutely horrible if against you. His auto attacks don't do jack shit if you ult him, and he can just E away from your Q. Kind of a bad time to start counting to 4 while you're in my bailout, no? Jinx, Kai'Sa, Kalista, and Kog'Maw, they're all great. Lucian is fine with you, but pretty bad against you because he relies on his auto attack resets. Great ult synergy with MF. She's okay into you. Samira, best AD carry to play with, awful into you. Senna is just okay with you, but awful to play against due to her range. Playing with Sivir is actually really nice. You can also play decently into her as well if you force her shield. Tristana and Twitch are great in both scenarios. Similar to Ashe and Kate, Varus is great with you, just fine into you. Vayne is great synergy, decent matchup. The only annoying thing about Xayah is her ult. Playing with a Yasuo is not that bad if the player is good. However, playing into him is pretty bad because of the wind wall, obviously. Playing with a Zeri is actually quite nice, but playing into Zeri is the most miserable experience you can have on bot lane. If you can ult her, you ult her for no reason anyway because she deals 0 damage with her auto attacks. Getting into support matchups, I just want to make a quick note. I don't consider Renata to be a clear counter to any of the other supports, mainly because of her multifunctional nature, so to speak. Her hook is worse than any other hooker. Her shield is worse than any other enchanters. So she is basically more like a jack of all trades than anything, so it's kind of hard to be a clear counter to any of the other supports. Not much to say about Ali. You just have to stay sharp and respond to his combo with your Q. Blitz is the same as with everybody else. You either dodge the hook or you die. Janna is okay. Her Q is kind of annoying, but at the same time, she can't really ult as long as you have ult. I consider Karma to be one of the most balanced matchups. Leona and Lulu are not bad either. Lux is mildly annoying, but if you time your E correctly, you should be able to prevent most of the poke she's doing with her E. Most people will probably look at me funny after I say this, but I actually think the Morgana matchup is not that bad. That is because she can only spell shield one person, and a good Renata player will always try to ult multiple people. Nami can sometimes be annoying, but overall it's not a bad matchup. Nautilus is pretty similar to Alistar. Just try to double tap Q whenever he Qs. Pike matchup usually feels very skill dependent. Both Rakan and Rel, very similar story to Nautilus and Alistar. Try to cancel their engage with Q. Sona matchup is usually good, especially in lane, because you can bully her. Just pay attention that she outscales you a bit. Swain and Thresh, both skill dependent, just like Pike. The Yuumi matchup is generally pretty boring. You can do almost anything you want. Just be careful not to ult while Yuumi is attached, otherwise the enemy AD carry might start hitting you instead. Last decent matchup is Zyra, sometimes annoying, generally pretty okay. Your ult is generally a waste if you play into Bard, for two main reasons. One, he's barely ever in lane, and two, because he can ult on top of your ult and cancel it. Brand deals way too much damage for your W to mean anything. Maokai becomes untargetable during his W animation, so you can't shake him off with your Q. While normally Pantheon wouldn't be such a big deal because you can actually cancel his jump stun with your Q, he deals too much burst damage for it to matter. Both Senna and Seraphine are long-range poke bullies. Taric just ults whenever you ult. That's it. Another long-range poke bully. Xerath is arguably the worst matchup you can have as Renata. You will never get in range on this guy to Q him, poke him with E, anything at all. If you even try to do that, you'll be left with 1/3 of your HP. And the last one on the list, Zilean. It's actually a pretty bad matchup because his revive is much better than yours. Yes, you can argue that it's an ultimate ability, but Zileans love building cooldown reduction anyway. And the difference between your revive and his is that his revive is not conditioned by anything. You need to take a takedown. He doesn't. Now, if you've reached this point into the video, I just want to say thank you, and hopefully this will help you understand Renata Glasc better. Now, as a little goodbye gift, I would like to show you how to execute the hidden R technique. What you have to do to pull this off is actually to throw your Q in a random direction, and while the Q animation is ongoing, you cast R in a different direction. But the R will show as if you're casting it where you cast your Q. And as for flash R, you just have to make sure that you're casting your flash before the ult channel finishes. If anyone asks what the best Admiral Glasc chroma is, it's Obsidian.